have Mel Robbins here today, you guys, which is Mel Robbins. I've ingested all of Mel Robbins. I don't think there's a thing about you that I don't know. Well, I'm sure.
And you still invited me?
I know. It's a lot. It's kind of like when people drown themselves in information about me. I always am like, I'm so sorry. And and they're like, I've read everything. I've looked at everything. I'm so prepared for this interview. And I'm always like, I'm really sorry that you had to listen to all that, which is exactly what you said to me when I ran into you the other day at some podcast we were both doing. You were like, I'm so sorry. It was Mel Robbins week at my house. So we are educated because I knew of you from social media. But then when I read your story in your new book, The Let Them Theory, I like that you also come up with your own theories. I love that. You talk in the beginning of the book about your story, which is incredible, that you were $800,000 in debt and you were at the end of your rope. And you had no idea how you were going to pay. And you had 4 children and you had no idea how you were going to pay your finances. And you guys were broke. And
I was also fucking furious with my husband because I thought it was his fault that we were in this
it's always
position.
Everyone else's fault. And then you decided one day that you to start practicing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes. Well, the story is that I was having this moment. If you've ever had a moment in your life, and I know you have, which is why we like each other, where you literally find yourself talking to yourself out loud and you're saying, that's it. No more drinking. I'm not going to be a bitch to everybody. I got to find a job. I got to get in shape. I got to tell people what's going on. I got to take responsibility for my life. And by God, Mel, when that alarm rings tomorrow morning, you cannot lay there like a human pot roast marinating in your problems. You got to get your ass out of bed and get those kids on the bus. And at that moment, I swear to God, a rocket ship launched across the television screen at the end of a commercial. And I thought, that's it. That's the answer. Tomorrow morning, when that alarm rings, I'm going to rocket myself out of bed so fast, I'm not going to be in that bed when that anxiety hits. Now, I had 4 bourbon Manhattans that night. So it could have been the alcohol that gave me that idea because I was drinking an awful lot back then. But that was the moment that changed my life. Because the very next morning, the alarm rang. And what's interesting about life, and when I show you this, you will never unsee it. And it's not my breasts, which you definitely don't want to see right now.
We'll get a picture of those.
We'll get
later.
a picture of those. But there is this moment that defines your whole life. And it's this 5-second window. And it's the moment between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it. And we make a critical mistake where you know the thing that you need to do, but instead of doing it, you stop and consider how you feel about it. It's this moment of hesitation. And as soon as you drift from knowing what you need to do to thinking about whether or not you feel like doing it, in that 5-second moment of hesitation comes the doubt and the anxiety and the procrastination. And what's happening in your brain, I didn't know this at the time, is that you're moving from being conscious to switching into the default mode in your brain where your patterns and habits take over. And I had a habit of avoidance. I had a habit of blaming. I had a habit of anger. I had a habit of hitting the snooze button over and over and over again.
Like kind of like a victim mentality.
Oh,
right?
1,000%. Because my problems felt so overwhelming that my response was to freeze. And I didn't think anything that I was going to do was going to matter. So why do it?
Right.
And that's what I find is a massive challenge for most of us. That we all know the little things that we could be doing that would make us a little happier or healthier, right?
Right. That seemed like an uphill, almost insurmountable to even get there, but they're not insurmountable.
They're not insurmountable, but if you have the opinion, well, why does it matter? Like, because in that moment when the alarm rang and I remembered the rocket launch and this window of hesitation opened and I go, I don't feel like getting out of bed. It's dark. It's cold. It's February in Boston. We're $800,000 in debt. How is this going to help? And for whatever reason, I just started counting backwards, just like NASA does. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I stood up and it was bizarre. And that was the first morning that I had gotten out of bed when the alarm rang in months. And so I went on with my day. The next morning, same thing.
Wait, what were you doing before that? You would just, your alarm would go off and you would just sit in bed and lie there?
I would rot in bed like most people.
And
like
just
literally
going over your problems?
I mean, if you think about those moments where you wake up and you either hate your job or you're in a crappy relationship or you're not happy or you're struggling with something, you wake up and you don't want to face the day. And so instead of facing the day, which would help because once you get up, you can keep going typically, I would lay there. And as I would lay there and stare at the ceiling and that feeling of dread would come over my body, my mind would then take over and start racing through all the problems that were going on.
Yeah.
And they just started stacking up like a gravity blanket pinning me there. And then when you feel that, you don't want to wake up. What you want to do is avoid the day. And so I would hit the snooze button to try to fall back asleep because I'm hoping that I'm just waking up in a nightmare. This isn't actually my life. And then ultimately it would get to the point where the kids are standing next to me and the bus is already gone. And now I'm like, okay, here we go again. And it's stunning how the smallest things can feel impossible in life. Impossible. And what I know now is there's so much that explains why we're wired this way. But I didn't know any of this then. I just knew that my life was falling apart and everything that I cared about was circling the drain. And there was absolutely nothing I was doing that was helping. And yet I knew the little things that could help. I mean, obviously, if you don't have any money and you can barely put food on the table, you should get a job, right? If you are drinking every night and then waking up with a hangover, it's not helping you face this stuff. And so avoidance became a chronic habit for me. And this one little tool, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and pushing through this sort of insight that, oh my God, there's a window of time between knowing what you need to do and then your brain killing your motivation to do it. And if you act in that window, whether it's speaking up at work or starting the hard conversation or getting your ass up off the couch and...
Or an example you use in the book is like, someone asking you to dance and it being a great idea, but then you think about it and you're like, do I want to be dancing in front of all these people? Do I actually want to get up and dance?
Yeah.
And in that 5 seconds, you lose your mojo when you could have been dancing this whole time and having a good time.
Yes. And so, one of the things that I point out, that I love to point out when I'm teaching this is if you think about the most famous tagline in the world, just do it, right? Those 3 words, right? Just do it. What's the most powerful word?
Do.
No.
It's not it.
It's just.
It's just.
I'm going to explain why. If Nike's tagline had been, do it, that's not that inspiring. The word just acknowledges both your humanity and your potential. See, they're calling you from the sideline and inviting you to join in the game of life. They're saying, I see you there. I see that you want this. And I see you doubting yourself. I see you questioning yourself. They're acknowledging the only thing that is stopping you. And it's that moment of hesitation where you stop and think and you question yourself. And that was my whole life. And so discovering this little tool, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, both acknowledge the just, you're hesitating. And it became a tool that helped me push through anxiety or fear or procrastination or old habits to do the little things that actually are everything. Like just one small move at a time.
And so then this led to you getting up and realizing that you wanted to be a motivational speaker, right? And within that, when you're talking about the little steps you have to take in order to succeed and build a life that you want, you were motivationally speaking without getting paid in the beginning.
Yeah. So what happened is I used the 5-second rule to turn my life back on track over the course of 3 years. And so I am in my life outside of Boston, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, networking until I get a job. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, finding a separate job. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, going for walks. 5, 4, like just one move, in complete survival mode. Like I'm trying to pay bills. I'm trying to get these kids to school. I am trying to keep my marriage on track. I'm trying not to be a raging bitch to everybody. I'm trying not to drink myself into the ground. One move at a time. And so I had never told anybody about it because first of all, it sounds stupid. Oh, Chelsea, you want to change your life? Count to 5. I'm out. Podcast interview's over. And I also had no idea why it worked. I almost felt like maybe I'd been given this little magic trick. Maybe I was a witch. Maybe there was some sort of spell I had learned. And I get a call from somebody that I had gone to college with. And she's like, hey, Mel, there's this event happening in San Francisco. And they are offering 2 tickets to San Francisco and 2 nights at the St. Regis. And all you got to do is talk about career change. And you've changed your career so many times, I thought of you. Now, I don't think that's a compliment, but when you hear that and you're $800,000 in debt and you've got liens on your house, that sounds like a vacation, Chelsea.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll do it. I had no idea what TED was. I had no idea what TEDx was. So I show up in San Francisco, and it's one of the first ever TEDx conferences. It's not even registering that I'm going to walk on a stage and there's going to be 700 people there. And so they didn't really prepare you. You got 19 minutes. I had a cheesy slide deck. If you watch my TEDx talk, you're witnessing a 21-minute long panic attack. Look closely at minute 1 and you will see a neck rash that is the kind of rash people get when they are drinking. And I'm darting around the stage.
I did watch this. This is the one where Chris is in the audience, or is that a separate TED Talk?
Oh, no, that's the one.
That's the one. Okay.
And so I'm darting in and out and all
I've
over
seen
the
it.
place. And I wasn't planning on talking about the 5-second rule. I forgot how to end the speech.
I remember that you were like, oh, wait, I have one more thing to tell
Yes.
you at the end. And you're
Yes.
like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which
Yes.
is why I'm fucking here in the first place.
Yes. And then the part that you didn't see, because I ultimately had to write to them. I was so disassociated at the end. I barely remember it. Like if I watch that video, I'm like, I don't even remember being on that stage. And at the very end, after I said, oh yeah, I'm like, oh, and if you have any questions, here's my email address. And I walk off the stage. And I say to my husband, honest to God, thank God that's over. Thank God only those people saw that. This was the worst moment of my life. And I went on with my life. A year goes by and TEDx puts it online. I don't even know it's online. Another year goes by and it starts to go viral. And I start getting messages at that email address. And people are like, I saw that thing you didn't. I'm like, were you in the audience? They're like, no, it's online. And so I would stay up at night responding to emails from strangers because I was so blown away that this little thing that I invented was helping people stay sober or helping them lose 100 pounds or helping them change jobs, because it's a tool that helps you go from thinking about something to doing it.
Well, also, it would be elementary if it was just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. What you're explaining is that if you miss that little window, you're missing your day, you're missing your goals, you're missing your dreams. So it's what your brain does. And that's an integral part of it.
Yes. And so then what happened is people started to write and ask if I would come do that talk at events. Now, meanwhile, I'm a normal person. I think celebrities like you are people that get paid to do this, people that have books, people that, have some sort of thing to say and have credentials to talk about this stuff. I'm basically somebody who's fucked up her life. And I figured out a simple thing to help me crawl out of the hole that I had dug for myself and then fallen into. And so I didn't even think that I would get paid to do something like this. So I show up at 7 different events. And here's the irony. They were all women's events. So they're all women's empowerment events. And I'm speaking for free. And I will never forget this. I was at the Pennsylvania Women's Conference. And this would have been probably 2013 or late 2012. And I was, in a room, and the rooms were starting to get a little bit bigger. And so there were probably, 700,000 people in there. And this woman comes up to me afterwards, honest to God. She says, Mel, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, yeah, absolutely. And she says, I spoke this morning at another breakout session, and I just thought you were absolutely fantastic. But I was just curious, have you gotten your check yet? I said, check? You got paid for this? And she took a step back and she went, oh my God, I just assumed. I mean, you have a big breakout room. I'm like, you got paid for this? And meanwhile, I'm still have liens on my house. And I'm thinking, I could make money doing this? And I thought, you are the world's biggest idiot, Mel. And then I had a problem because I had no idea what to charge. Because I don't have a book, I don't have this, I don't have anything. I have this TED Talk, and I'm now starting to understand the value of it because it is really like a credential when it comes to keynote speaking. And so I came up with this little thing that anybody starting a business should steal. I basically said to myself, I'm going to use the 5-second rule to stop myself, because you can use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to push yourself forward, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to put yourself in pause. And the next time somebody calls me and they ask me if I'm available, I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to pause. I'm going to say, yeah, I think I can make it. And then I'm going to say, what's your budget? And then I'm going to say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Normally I'm double. Because I didn't know what to charge.
Right.
So a couple weeks later, I get a call. And it's from a guy who's in Dallas. And he's calling me to see if I can come down and give a speech at some big event where there's going to be a bunch of people that are small business owners in it. And I said, great. I think I'm available. How much, is it? He said, $10,000. I dropped the fucking phone. That was like almost 4 months of my mortgage. I had no idea. I was expecting $500, and I pick up the phone. I forgot the second part about doubling the thing, and I'm like, yes. And then a really important thing happened. I was so nervous, and I felt so unworthy of that amount of money that I spent half of it with a graphic designer, because I figured if I had a fancy presentation, that would make me seem fancy enough for that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the nerves were really important, and the preparation was important, because there are moments in your life, these at-bat moments, where you step up to the plate that you want to meet the moment. And because I prepared, I stepped onto that stage and I destroyed it. And he came up to me afterwards and he was like, I have been in this business 20 years. You are the single best female speaker I've ever seen in my life, and you're top 3 of all time, period. Who runs your business? And I was like, you do. And he has run my business ever since.
Oh, wow.
And in terms of the speaking side of the business, and that next year, 47 speeches, the next year, 99 speeches, the next year, it was like 117. And, I was so committed to paying off our debt and to paying our savings back. And because we had gotten into that hole, because when my husband went into the restaurant business, when the first pizza joint was successful, we were complete idiots. We cashed everything out. We took out credit cards, a home equity line. We, what could possibly go wrong? And everything went wrong. And so when the business started to do this, everything that we had worked our whole lives for, I was 41 years old, 3 kids under the age of 10, started going down the drain too. And, if you're somebody that believes in manifesting, which I do, I never made a vision board that was like divorce, alcoholism, bankruptcy. That wasn't part of the plan. And when things go off the rails in your life, it's funny. Like, it's super easy to give other people advice because it's not personal. But when it's you,
yeah,
and it's the things that you're scared of or the things that you care about that are breaking apart in front of your eyes, you have a very hard time believing that these simple things actually work for you. And so what the 5-second rule taught me is it taught me that there is a skill that we can all develop. And it's a skill of being able to act in spite of your feelings. Being able to recognize when you're afraid or you're hesitating or you're doubting yourself, and to either push through it or rise above it, but to allow your values or your goals or the thing that you really want to be driving your actions versus feeling held hostage by your emotions in the moment. Because motivation's complete garbage, in my opinion, because it's not there when you need it. And if motivation were available to us all at any time, we would all have millions of dollars and 6-pack abs and like billion-dollar businesses. And that would be that. Motivation simply means you feel like doing something. And what I've now learned, both through the experts that we have on my podcast and all the research that I've done for this book in particular, is that our brains are wired to move towards what's easy. And when you're struggling like I was struggling, it's easy to stay in bed.
Yeah.
And your brain is wired to push against and move away from whatever feels hard, which sets up a problem. And the problem is changing's hard. And so you're never going to feel like it. But you can do it anyway. And recognizing that it's going to be hard and recognizing that you're going to feel resistance, that's just part of the natural wiring of your body. Recognizing that and then knowing it's a skill to go, okay, this is going to be hard. Fuck it. I'm going. And that's what my success is about. Like, my success literally boils down to the fact that I get out of bed on the days I don't feel like it. And every day I do the grueling, tedious, annoying crap that leads to incredible things over time.
Well, right. And I think the productivity begets more productivity. Once you do get yourself out of that spot and you start to like work towards what you want to achieve, then that starts to become more of a habit, right?
Yes.
And you're getting yourself out of one bad habit and leading yourself to better habits that are going to help you
that's the
attain your
theory.
goals.
There's lots of ways I still screw things up. So.
Well, that's exactly like I'm always like, okay, positivity, optimism. And then the last 2 weeks, I'm like, get the fuck out of my face to anybody, like leave me alone. Don't ask me to do one more thing. I'm at the end of my rope. I'm like, I want to be euthanized. I said that to my sister the other day. She goes, well, at least if you're voicing it, because if you really wanted to euthanize yourself, you would just do it. She's like, so I know you're full of shit. Anyway, I've been giving out your advice yesterday we were on a podcast. I was like, listen, you need to just follow the let them theory for this one. It was two people. It was two callers because we have live callers. Your most recent book that just came out, right? This is just out.
Yep.
Yeah. The let them theory. Is it 3 children you have or 4?
3.
Oh, sorry. I said
That's
it
I
4.
consider my dogs and cat.
Oh, okay.
Child.
Well, you didn't correct
Sometimes
me.
Who cares? Let 'em.
Yeah, okay.
Let
Yeah,
you.
maybe there is another one
Let her
out
say
there.
that.
So
Maybe.
you have another sibling you haven't met yet.
That's why I won't do 23andMe. I don't want. I'm already paying for everybody like that I've created, so I don't need any hanger-ons.
And I'm sure some extras. The let them theory also would seem, pretty basic, but it's not basic for all of us. It's like, letting people do their things that really have nothing to do with you.
Yes.
Letting go of control, basically.
Yes.
Is like allowing people, if someone wants to be an asshole, if someone wants to be in a bad mood, if your kid doesn't want to go to a party with you, let them stay home. Let that person be in a bad mood. Don't try to tinker with their mood to make it what you want it to be.
Yes.
Which is advice that obviously everyone can use, and which is advice I'm very excited you're here today because we have people who call in for advice, and it's nice to have another sister to lean on. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Mel Robbins. And we're back with Mel Robbins and her new book, which is called The Let Them Theory. You guys need to pick this up. It's a great read. And I think there's a lot of commonalities, and you mentioned this within the book. You talk a lot about, like Buddhism or Stoicism or the letting go. And
well, hold on a second. Let me say something about this. I don't believe in letting go.
You don't?
God, no.
Oh, I do.
Oh, I don't. Let me tell you why.
I feel like the let them theory and letting go are similar.
Not at all.
Okay.
See, I've never been able to let anything go because I'm competitive as hell. And when somebody says, Mel, just let it go, that to me means admit defeat and move on. And I don't like to let something go or feel like I have to just give up because it's like out of my hands. And so I've never been able to access that. To me, let them is very different because when you say let them, you're seeing what somebody is doing. And you're allowing it without allowing it. And when I say, let it go, I feel defeated. When I say, let them, I feel superior. And so it's this tool that allows me to not only detach, but it allows me to feel in control and superior to the things that are irritating me or that are worrying me or that have hurt me. And so I feel it is very different in terms of the emotional experience and the psychological experience.
I feel like letting go of things isn't about giving up or defeatism. Like, I feel like when you can let go of something, it is very analogous to what you're saying. You're kind of rising above it. You're not giving into it. You're going, let that go. That's not for me. Not I'm giving it away or I'm giving up. That's not like, it's almost like that's not my business either. Let that go. Let my grudge against this person go. Let that go. I feel like it is very similar, but you are the author and it doesn't work for you. So we'll agree to disagree on that. But all of these are modes and ways to not focus on what other people are doing and to focus on yourself and the things that you can control.
And here's the reason why this matters. The reason why this matters is because you have no idea how much time and energy you are wasting on things that either don't matter or that you will never be able to control. If you feel tired or overwhelmed or you feel like you're last on your list or you're just not as happy as you would like to be in your life, I'm going to tell you right now, the problem isn't really you. The problem is you're unknowingly giving so much power to other people, and that's what's draining you. And that's why you have no time. Mm-hmm. And one of the enormous benefits of learning how to use the let them theory, both in relationships and in your day-to-day life, is it's the ultimate boundary between you and the world, because you get to choose when you say let them, what actually impacts you and what doesn't. And what I was stunned by when I started using this thing is I could not believe, first of all, how many times I said it. So I must have a lot of anger issues because I was in traffic. Let them. I'm at the cash register and it's too long. Let them. I walk in the front door and my dog is barfed right on the entry, and my husband's home and he hasn't picked it up yet. Let them. And it was like this little lever that allowed me to go from not stressed and on edge and kind of annoyed, but actually just stay peaceful and unbothered. And when you can go through life like that, you get your time back and you get energy back. And that's time and energy that you can pour into other things. And your whole experience of life is determined by what you pour time and energy into. And so it shifts absolutely everything.
Okay, great. I'm excited to take some callers.
Yeah,
What do we have first for Mel?
Well, let's start with Katie. She writes, Dear Chelsea, I don't really know how to write a fun, kitschy greeting with the current political climate, so I'm just going to get right down to it.
I always forget about the politics when we're doing this podcast. It's such a nice reprieve. I forget what's happening.
I know. I'm sorry to remind you.
I would appreciate not getting any letters like this.
But I saw you address this, Mel, and so with let them theory, and so I thought this was a good question for you. I'm a 34-year-old white liberal female with she/her pronouns that was very unfortunately born and raised in a red state. I've always viewed myself as a positive and understanding person that accepts people's differences as a beautiful thing, as long as we're all treating each other with love and kindness. But with over half the country voting and electing such an openly hateful and dangerous human being, I'm really struggling to find any positivity in my day-to-day life. I've gone to great lengths to build the community around me and to be supportive and safe for all people. But since announcing the new president-elect, I have discovered that a disgusting amount of my friends, family, and coworkers are actually celebrating his impending presidency. I've been crying, screaming, and raging about this for days, and I do not foresee any relief as I have suddenly found myself surrounded by hate and without any hope for a better future. My community has been dismantled, our democracy, our very basic human rights, and bodily autonomy are at risk, and there's a very big part of me that just wants to light a match and watch the world burn. How do I let go of this rage so I can move forward and try to find a light at the end of the tunnel? I do not want to let this evil man turn me into a hateful and intolerant person. At rock bottom, Katie.
Mel, why don't you take the lead on this?
I'd love to.
Go for it.
I'd love to. There was a particular line in there that struck me. Can I see that?
Absolutely.
Here it is. I've suddenly found myself surrounded by hate and without any hope for a better future. That was the line that hit me the most. Without any hope for a better future. And the reason why that line hit me is because this illustrates the problem with giving power to other people. Why on earth would you put all of the power for a better future in the hands of one idiot who's running this country? And how dare any of us forget the power that we have to make an enormous difference no matter what the hell is going on in our families, in our communities, in our schools, in our relationships. You know what I can't stand is that when I think about relationships, I see a spider web. And when you're out in the morning walking, the dew hits the spider web, right? That means we're all interconnected. And we allow one person who has a narcissistic personality or toxic behavior or a challenging demeanor or really bigoted opinions to go in and tap, tap, tap that spider web and impact all of us. I believe something different. I believe that the person that is calm and peaceful and rational and connected has more power than that person. And it's time we all start using it. And so it is appropriate to feel your emotions and let those emotions come up. And the reason why you're writing, I want to acknowledge, is important because you now understand that those emotions that are very mentally healthy response to what's happening around you, by the way, those emotions mean you're working well. It means your mind and your body are working the way that it should. So that's great. And you're writing for help because you also know something else. You don't want any other person, whether it's your family members or the people that just got elected or what is going on anywhere around you, to impact your mental health. And here's what I'm going to say. They don't have to. And the reason why you have to say, let them, is because the election's over. And the people that you care about have opinions that you do not understand. And arguing with them, we know based on research, just turns off the part of the brain that has anybody hear anything. And so being in conflict with people doesn't change them. It actually creates more resistance to hearing you or to changing themselves. And so when you say let them, you're not agreeing with anything. You're not allowing anybody to trample you or your rights.
And you're also not trying to convince anyone of anything.
Yes. Right? No, because you can convince people. You're a highly influential person through your behavior and your energy. And people only change when they can or when they feel like changing. And when you give people the space to come to their own conclusions and you influence them through your behavior and energy, they change on their own. When you engage in arguments and battles and judgment over these things, even if your judgments are right, and by the way, they're judging you and they think they're right, you create deadlock. And that's what's wrong with the political system in most of the world right now, is we're all in deadlock. And so I'm not saying that what's happening is right. I'm not saying that, there's not reasons to be nervous. What I am saying is this: if you don't let them, if you don't detach from this, you're going to allow the stress and anger and anxiety of uncertainty to hijack your brain. And you are not going to be able to think strategically, and you are not going to be motivated. And in a moment like this, what we need is more light. In a moment like this, your job is to glow. It is not to turn the light off. And so I say this is the perfect moment to say, let them, because you recognize what's happened has happened. People believe what they believe. Your power is not in managing that. Your power is taking responsibility for how you're going to respond. And let's even just look at the word responsibility. It's the ability to respond. And in life, you always have three things. You have three things within your control. This is where your power is. Number one, you get to choose what you think. So you get to choose what you think about what just happened, and more importantly, what you think you're going to do about it. Number two, you get to choose what you're going to do or not do. And I will remind you of that famous Professor Margaret Mead quote of, it only takes a small group of committed citizens to change everything. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has. And if you don't like what you see, that person is you. And so you get to choose not only what you're going to do or not do, but you also get to choose, by the way, whether or not you're going to stay in a conversation or a dining room table or a family text chain or a conversation or a date or a job interview. You get to choose, which means you're in power. And you also get to choose what you're going to do with your emotions. And if you're tired of being angry, and I really acknowledge the fact that you recognize that this is no longer a healthy emotion for you, what I would focus on is I would focus on going inward, processing your anger, and then I would focus on you doing what you need to do to become the best version of you. Because when you do that, you are better prepared to face the challenges in the world, the things that you care about, and to get to work, because that's what we all need to do.
Yes. I agree with that. I think that when you feel depleted and you feel angry, you feel like you're at the end of your rope, you're in a weakened state. You are in a state where you're going to hate, you're going to blame, and you're going to feel hopeless. And it's your job to get you back into more of an activated state so that you can actually spread love and joyfulness and kindness, even to the people that you disagree with, because that is the medicine that everybody needs. That's the medicine that's going to make you feel good about what you're doing. And that's the medicine that is going to spread around your community. Don't talk to them about politics. Just treat them like human beings, and you don't know who they voted for. Like, even though you know and it's bothersome to you, it's not your job to sit there and judge them. Like we'll all see what's going to happen in the next couple of years. and it could be terrible or it could not be so terrible. We seriously don't know, but acting or living in this kind of dread isn't useful to anyone, including yourself. So you have to figure out a way in the next couple of days to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up and do something different other than feel sorry and hopeless about the future, because that is not a way to effectuate change.
The other thing that I'm going to say is this. So there's a tool that I talk about in this book called frame of reference, because I'm never going to tell you that if there are people in your life that have very bigoted opinions or opinions about who you are as a person or your identity or who you love, you still are in control of who you spend time with and how much access people have to you. But that is a deeply personal decision. What I have found to be incredibly helpful to me, because one of my deep values is family. And there are people in my life that have very different political opinions than I have. And so I choose, because I think we all need to get better at this, I choose, instead of judgment, to go, how the heck could somebody that I know is a really decent person, and a smart person and a caring person, actually vote for this person? And so instead of pulling back, I let them have their opinions and their beliefs, right? Which creates space. It creates space for two things to be true. I mean, I think one of the reasons that there are families is because it teaches you how to love people you hate sometimes. And having the ability to give people the space to think what they think and to have their opinions about things, it's a way of loving people, even when you disagree with them. And so what I choose to do, because I'm like, I don't fucking understand how you, I know who you are. This does not compute. I go, how do I step into your shoes? And I actually understand why this made sense to you. And I'm going to give you my personal opinion. Everybody's distracted. Unless you have a hyper bigoted person, most people are wildly distracted. And if you look at the algorithms, and you look at the way everything changed in terms of, you look at one video, the algorithms show you 50,000 more videos, right? Most people are getting their news on TikTok. Nobody trusts any news source. And so you have all of this information going at people. And so you might have somebody go, yeah, but the Joint Chiefs of Staffs. I'm like, 95% of people don't even know who that is or what that is or why they matter. And by the way, they didn't see it. And so now you have a situation where you have tremendous amount of pent-up anger that is aimed at the government because of the lockdown and the pandemic, right? So people are in a stressed out state. In fact, Dr. Aditi Nurikar from Harvard, one of the most respected stress management doctors in the world, believes that 83% of people in the United States are in a chronic state of stress, which means your amygdala is on and you're in fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, you can't really think critically. When you spend 6 hours a day on social media, which is what the research now shows the average person does.
Oh my God.
I mean, kids, it's like 12.
And so
it's crazy.
I'm putting this in context, not to justify anything, but because I choose to want to understand. And that's what we have lost as a skill in terms of human relationships. And when I look at all of that and I go, oh, there's a lot of frustration and pent up anger that people have about what happened these last 4 years and how they feel about the new normal and hybrid work and the rise of cost of things. And everybody wants to blame everybody. Look at me. When I was so in debt, who did I blame? My husband. And so it's easy to blame. And when you go into the election booth and you vote, you literally have the capacity to remember just about one thing. I remember this as a young trial lawyer when I was a public defender at Legal Aid. The OJ case was happening. And so a lot of our supervisors, when I was a public defender, would talk a lot about the fact that when you're doing a case, cases come down to the thing you want a jury to repeat when they go back to deliberations. And if I had to say, even to my daughters who are in their 20s, if the glove doesn't fit, you got to acquit. You know exactly what case I'm talking about, even though this was decades ago. Please tell me the Democrats' tagline.
Right.
And whether you vote for one side or the other tagline is nostalgic and personal. So everybody actually thinks it means something else. And so if you have people who are stressed out, getting their news on TikTok, going in and going, okay, well, who's going to do better by me? guess who they choose? And so that's how I have come to rationalize, that's how I understand, even though all these other things don't line up with your character, how you would make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, but this is the most important part. You get to choose. You get to choose. If the person's opinions are that offensive to you, you get to choose how much time and energy you put into it.
And you also get to choose how much grace you are able to demonstrate for a person who has such conflicting and opposing views, because there's a lot of there's a lot of joy in that as well, being graceful for another person's opinions that don't mesh with yours. I think that's a nice skill set to learn and something you should think about, moving forward once you get out of this funk, which you are going to get out of this funk. Okay, what do we have next, Catherine? I want to get as many callers on as possible.
Subject line is anxious gay with therapist husband seeks podcast help. Dear Chelsea, I'm a 39.
Thank you for putting it in terms we can understand.
Yes.
Oh, look, there they are.
Oh, hi.
So they say, Dear Chelsea, and this comes from Anthony at first. He says, I'm a 39-year-old married gay man. My husband, Justin, and I have been together for 12 years and married for almost 2. He's a licensed therapist, very level-headed and soft-spoken. And then there's me, not a therapist, slightly neurotic, a bit of an oversharer, and kind of all over the place. Think the gay version of Jenny Molin, obsessed with his exes and all.
Okay.
A lot of our friends find our dynamic fascinating and entertaining, so I thought, why not start a podcast? Maybe even a YouTube or a TikTok account where we give opinions and advice on anything and everything. Who wouldn't want to get guidance from him, a real therapist, and their kind of messy but well-meaning friend, me? It sounds fun, but we have no idea where to start. Also, the world already feels flooded with influencers and content creators, so falling into that category is kind of embarrassing to me. That alone makes me almost want to abandon the idea. Love the podcast. It's where I got this whole ridiculous idea from. Love, Anthony, and I guess Justin. P.S. I haven't told him we're writing this in yet.
Oh, you're just finding
we're
out.
Gonna grab our little headphones.
Oh.
Eventually we'll remember to do this before we
I know. One day
Hi,
soon.
fellas.
Hi, boys.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Well, you're in luck because we have a real ringer here today, Mel Robbins.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
So first of all, there is no bad podcast idea because, as it has been proven, everyone can have a podcast. And so having an idea in and of itself is always possible. But if you're poo-pooing the idea or if you find the idea embarrassing, that's not how you launch a podcast. You have to be committed and fully into it, because I do think, just listening to you, I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't that be a podcast? There's a lot of gay couples out there, just to start with, that would be interested in getting, feedback from another gay couple.
That's true. I don't know. I guess mainly it's just not knowing really where
To begin.
to start. Yeah, really.
I don't think that's your issue.
Oh.
This is Mel Robbins.
And when Anthony says embarrassed, that's more of how he describes his anxiety. Your Instagram bio is embarrassed about everything.
Yeah,
Like,
it's everything makes me
No.
embarrassed.
Let me
And
tell you
just-
what your issue is. You ready?
Okay, yeah.
I know, I'm serious. Your issue is very clear to me. And the issue is you're giving power to other people's opinions. And you
I do that a lot.
Yes. And so I'm going to teach you how to stop doing that. Because if you want something in your heart, the only person that can stop you from doing it is you. And if you are sitting there saying, I would like to launch a podcast, the things you need to do are easy. Just Google it and AI will spit out the 7 steps and do it. But what's going to stop you is you're going to stop and consider what other people are going to think about this. And that means you're giving power to another person's thought. And here's the reason why that sucks. The average person has 70,000 thoughts a day, and you will never be able to crawl up into their head and manipulate what they think about you. And so instead of causing yourself anxiety, and instead of navigating your life trying to do things so that people don't think something negative, I want you to do the opposite. I want you to use my let them theory. And when you feel anxious and you start to go, I don't know what to do, and I don't know, no. You're worried people are going to judge, and you're going to say, let them think negative thoughts. Let them judge me. Let them unfollow. Let them not listen. Let them think whatever they're going to think, because I know it's a waste of my time and energy to try to manage something I'm never going to be able to control. So I'm going to let them think what they want. And then you're going to say the second part, which is let me take the power back and follow the list on AI and launch the damn podcast. Because when you do that and you no longer allow other people's opinions to be an obstacle, you're going to be proud of yourself. And when you're proud of yourself, you won't give a shit what anybody thinks because you know who you are. But as long as you're giving power to something you can never control, which is what somebody else is going to think, you will be standing in your way and robbing yourself of the potential of your life for the rest of your life. Do not do that. That is a sad way to go through life, and you have something to offer. And the fact that you took the time to write in to Chelsea to ask about it means you want to do it. So do not allow someone else's opinion, which you cannot control. Start saying, let them have a negative opinion.
This is the book.
Yeah,
Go
get
get
it and read it.
The
Order
Let Them
a copy
theory.
today. This is going to tell you This is going to tell you her story, how she began, everything she was facing, and how she got herself out of it, and how she got herself into motion. And this is what you need to read.
And we found out today we are the 12th most streamed show on all of Spotify this year.
On her
So I know a
podcast.
little bit
Wow.
about what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Oh,
on the
okay,
planet.
well,
Yeah.
Yeah, so fucking
that
listen
case.
up. Okay,
Yeah,
guys?
let them think negative thoughts. And one more thing about the influencer thing. You influence people now. Everybody on the planet is an influencer because we are influenced by other people's behavior. And so don't let the label that you will never be able to control anyway stop you from going out and expressing yourself or trying to make a difference. Let them.
And you'll also find in the first 50 pages or so of the book that Mel's story is very similar. How you were like, oh, this seems so cringe. But, went out and got headshots and made a website and all that stuff.
I have nothing more.
Yeah.
I have nothing more to add to that. I think she really kind of gave you your marching orders, boys.
Well, geez, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, use that and apply it into all facets of your life. Because while
Absolutely.
being inveterately embarrassed or whatever your Instagram handle is might be cute and funny, you're really giving a lot of people power by having so many things that embarrass you. You know what I mean? Like if you can be embarrassing without being embarrassed about it. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I understand. No, that makes sense. I'll go change it right fucking now.
Well, you know what? You could also say, let Chelsea have her opinion. And then let me remind myself that I can choose what I think and I can choose what I do and I can choose how I process things. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
And go have fun.
Right.
Do a fun creative project together. This will be great. You'll have a great time.
Yeah, that's kind of how it all really started. I mean, just
Yeah, we have a lot of friends who are incredibly supportive of the idea. They want us to do it. They're begging us to do it, and it's just one of those things. Okay, in theory it sounds good, right? But almost, how will it actually be with people? How will they
you're
receive
focused
it? Right?
on the wrong thing.
Yeah, and
Do not look at
let them not
yes,
like it.
Yes, because here's the thing. You're not doing it so people listen. You're doing it to prove to yourself that you actually believe in yourself and that you honor the things that you want to try. You're not doing this so that other people like it. You're doing it so that you like yourself.
And by virtue of that, people will be interested.
Yes.
By virtue in your own self-belief, people will be interested.
all right. I love that.
It's very growth mindset.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That sounds great. Sounds like we fixed everything.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
boys.
Yeah, all of our problems. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
We'll take a quick break and we'll come back to wrap up with Mel Robbins.
All right. So our last one, we have another caller.
Great, let's do it.
Okay, great. This is Brooklyn, and she's 33. She says, Dear Chelsea, my name is Brooklyn, and I'm from Vancouver, BC. I need some advice on what to do about my sister. She's been involved with a man for 4 years now that will not commit to her, which is a blessing because he's the worst human imaginable. Him not committing makes her want him even more. When he did, quote unquote, commit, he cheated left, right, and center. He's involved with very dangerous people, himself being the main one. She's missing out on so many opportunities to meet a great guy because she's wasting her time with this low life. She's successful in the beauty industry and consumes her life outside of that, trying to get his approval. All our friends hate him. Our parents don't want him around. This could ruin her life. The potential is that bad. What do I do, Brooklyn? Hi, Brooklyn.
You have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Hi, this is Mel Robbins, our special guest today.
You guys are my top 2 podcasts I listen to. That's so crazy.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for that. Do you want to go first?
ahead, Mel.
Me?
You go. Take the lead.
So is this the first time she's been in a relationship with somebody who won't commit, or is this a pattern?
She had a great boyfriend
Okay.
before.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's had successful relationships.
Well, I asked that because there's a lot of research around this. And
Yeah.
if it's a pattern, it's one piece of advice. If it's not a pattern, it's a different piece of advice. Part of the problem is that she is in a dynamic with somebody that sounds like an abuse cycle where it's really good and then it's really bad and then there's an apology and then it's really good. And that activates addiction circuitry in the brain, which makes it very hard to leave. They've done a lot of study about the fact that if somebody's bad to you all the time, it's easier to leave. If somebody's good, then bad, then they're really good, then they're bad, then they're bad, then they're good. You don't understand, like you start kind of craving the good and you explain away the bad. And
Right.
so you're dealing with circuitry in the brain that is hard to overcome. And the reason why I'm going to start there is because people do well when they can. And she's in a situation where it doesn't sound like she can do well yet. And I am going to highly recommend that you dive deep into the let them theory, because she's not going to leave him until she feels like it. And she is going to stay in this longer if she feels judgment from you guys, because the judgment or the distance adds more shame, which makes her want to fix it more. And she's got to have, you're smart in not bringing it up, but there's now this dynamic where she knows this is not the right relationship and she's probably embarrassed about it. And when you're in that situation, the only way to redeem yourself is to somehow save the relationship. Because if she finally breaks up with him, what are you going to hear? I told you so. And so you're in this dynamic with her where there's a standoff. And knowing that she will do well when she can, and because of the dynamic of this relationship, she can't right now. And one of the best things that you can do is you can approach this very differently. First of all, have you apologized for judging? Have you apologized for pressuring her?
No, I've kind of approached the conversation as I tell her, like, I don't have anything nice to say, so I don't want to say it anymore. Like, that's kind of where that would end.
Okay. So there's something that I write about in the book called the ABC loop. And A stands for apologize and then ask open-ended questions. And the asking of the open-ended questions is, well, how do you feel about it? And is there anything that you want to change? And then you say, is there anything I can do to be more supportive? And that's it. And what you're doing is you're actually, in a non-judgmental way, you're creating space for her to talk about what's working and what's not working. And she might lie to you and be like, oh, everything's great. But here's the thing. Based on the research, what you're doing by asking open-ended questions is you're raising tension internally because she knows it's not working.
Yeah.
She knows this guy's a dickhead. She knows that she deserves better, but she's trapped in it. And so you're raising this tension that allows her to start to face the thing that she's gaslighting herself around. And then you're going to back off, because people don't change until they can or they feel like it. And nobody wants to change and be told, I told you so. So you're just back off and give her space. And that, but I don't say anything. I don't know what to say, so I don't say anything. That's actually not an apology. That you haven't backed off yet because she knows you're judging her. That's why the A part is important. Now you're going to back off for at least 3 months. And then you've got to just model positive behavior, meaning acceptance, love. Ask her, bring him around.
No.
But like, hey, I want to see you. And if that means like he's coming too, I'm going to change how I am around him. And you're going to notice something. She doesn't want him around because she knows he's not good for her.
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like what you said because I think that would bring us closer because there's this divide between us where we're not open anymore because we can't
course.
talk about everything.
Of
But
course. Well, because you're judging her.
yes.
And what
Well,
happened?
no,
Yes.
you're not even her, it's just him. But
No.
yeah.
No. Hold on. Hold on. You don't get to pick and choose that way.
Yeah.
If you're judging the person I'm dating, you're judging me.
Okay.
And so when you judge another human being, that doesn't create motivation for connection or change. It creates resistance to it. And you're going to have to wrap your brain around this. This is the hardest thing in the world to understand. You are right. And wanting the best for your sister is a beautiful and loving thing. And I want the best for your sister and you too. But you're going about it in a way that you're working against the circuitry of the way that human beings are wired. And it's creating pressure and resistance and distance. And that's not what you want.
Would this make a difference if he was dangerous?
Yes. And the average domestic violence relationship, I was a crisis intervention counselor on a domestic violence hotline.
Jesus, you really have had a lot of careers.
It takes somebody an average of 7 times to leave.
It's not domestic violence. It's he's dangerous himself in his life and his job and his life choices.
Understood. And when that's the case, there's almost always commingling of that type of violence in the relationship too, whether it's emotional or physical. And there's a tremendous amount of denial about what's actually going on. And so I think you need to talk to somebody that has expertise in domestic violence and in emotional abuse, because there's probably a lot of narcissistic personality style things going on too. And what the experts will tell you, I would start following Dr. Ramani Diversala, who's the world's leading expert on narcissism. But what the experts will tell you is that one of the hardest forms of abuse to unwind in somebody is the abuse that you receive when you're in a relationship with somebody that has a narcissistic and controlling personality style. And so you need to look at your sister as somebody who is in almost like a hostage situation. She doesn't even know it. And again, people do well when they can. And so when you say let them, you're not allowing this to happen to her. You're recognizing what's happening to her. And you're also recognizing that you can't get her out of this. She has to get herself out of this with your support. And the only way that's going to happen is if you can draw her closer to you. And as long as you're judging her or she feels that, you are creating distance. And so this is a situation where I would get support from a licensed therapist or counselor that deals with domestic violence or narcissism brain circuitry so they can advise you on this. But you really want to take an approach of open arms and no judgment and support. And that's going to draw her to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
It's almost like you have to outsmart the two of them, you know? Instead of being reactive to the situation, you kind of have to be the bigger person and see the situation for what it is, which probably has an expiration date. And, you know, getting closer to your sister rather than pushing her farther away is probably going to help, you know, expedite that expiration date without you controlling the situation.
That's so true. And I was doing the opposite. So that's really good advice from both of you. Yeah.
Great.
If you give the producers your address, I'm going to mail you a copy of the Let Them Theory before it's even out. So that, because you need to read this right now.
All right.
All right. Well, take care and good luck with everything with your sister.
Thanks,
Thank
Brooklyn.
you guys so much. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mel.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
You know what I wanted to ask you before we wrap up? So in this book, you talk about seeing like a group of friends of yours going on vacation, which I think is something that a lot of people can relate to in the age we live in. And you were fixated on this idea that you weren't invited to this weekend and this girls' getaway, even though you weren't very close friends with these girls at the time, right? You had known them over the years. have you had any interactions with those women? Like,
Yeah.
have they read this? They haven't read this yet.
Oh, I reached out to 2 of them.
Oh, you
and,
did?
And let them know.
Oh,
and,
you did?
And like the story of the house, it's like 6 different friends. And I'm like, it's not just you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a person with queen bunk beds in there.
So how?
So here's the thing. In the book, there's a story where I see on social media that people have gone away. And by the way, it's a mentally healthy response to feel disappointed when you're not invited. That's a sign that you're actually well. The problem is you then turn it against yourself and believe that you've done something wrong. And so having the let them theory was life-saving, because normally I would have spiraled for weeks. I would have distanced myself from people I deeply care about, and I would have made up stories in my mind that made me feel like some loser, like I did in middle school. And instead I said, let them. Let them go away. Let them have a weekend without me. Let them live their lives. And then you have to say the let me part. And this is the part that nobody likes. Everyone loves to get let them tattooed on them because you feel superior. But the let me part is where you have power and you take responsibility, because then you go, well, let me look a little deeper. If this hurts this much, clearly I value friendship. And now I got to ask myself, what am I thinking, doing, or feeling about it? And when I looked in the mirror, Chelsea, I was working so much, I had let my friendships go. And it's no one else's responsibility to create those relationships but mine. When was the last time I invited anybody over? When's the last time I planned a weekend away? When's the last time I picked up the phone and asked any one of those women that I now felt excluded from how they were doing? And the truth is, I hadn't done it in a very long time. And so then you go, well, what right do you have to expect to be invited if you're not even putting in the effort? And so the let them theory also reveals not just where other people are falling short and where you need to speak up and talk about what you need or how you may feel. It also reveals where you are, where you're sitting back bitching about your job, but you're actually phoning it in, where you are feeling lonely, but you haven't left your house in 5 days, where you have complaints about your family, but you haven't reached out to your siblings in a while. And so I love this so much, because whether you're talking about politics or you're talking about a very scary situation like that last caller, and you would do anything to extract your sister from that. And just like we would do anything to help somebody get sober. But when you pressure, you actually create resistance to change. And when you blame, you fail to see your power and responsibility in creating the things that you want in your life. And so it has been the single most powerful thing I've ever discovered. It has changed my life more than anything that I have ever learned about or used in my life. And I 1000% believe this is the legacy I will leave on this earth.
Ooh, we love it. Yeah. Well, we loved having you, Mel Robbins. And this book is obviously going to be a huge success. We know that for sure. And congrats on all of your success. It's very, very inspiring to see someone turn their life around in the way in which you have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So goodbye, everyone. We will see you next week.